It began so quietly that I almost didn't notice. At first, it was small, forgetting to eat breakfast, losing track of time at work, letting unread messages pile up on my phone. Then, before I could really understand what was happening, my whole life began to tilt, like a chair with one broken leg that you keep trying to balance on. When I lost my job, it didn't feel real. My manager avoided eye contact. His words, flat and rehearsed, were restructuring, nothing personal. I nodded, said something polite, and walked out holding a box that didn't feel like mine. It wasn't until I got to my car, a gray Honda that always smelled faintly of old coffee, that it hit me. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, engine off, watching the condensation form on the windshield. The city outside felt louder than usual, like the world was moving on without me. I didn't cry. Not that day, but the next morning, when I woke up and didn't have anywhere to go. No emails to check, no reason to shave, no one waiting for me. It was like gravity doubled. I could feel the weight of the air pressing against my chest. Every small movement, brushing my teeth, making coffee, checking the news, took effort. Like pushing through water. My phone buzzed a few times. Messages from friends, a meme from my sister, a reminder from the bank about a late payment. I ignored them all. I didn't want to explain. What would I say? Hey, I'm suddenly useless now. How are you? The thing they don't tell you about losing your footing in life is that it's not just sadness. It's chemical. You can feel it. It's in your skin, your bones. When people talk about low serotonin, it sounds like a medical term, but when it happens, it's like your soul gets quieter. Food tastes dull. Music sounds flat. Even sunlight feels different, too bright, almost hostile. I started sleeping more. It wasn't even restful sleep, just a kind of slow-motion escape. I drift in and out, my mind replaying old memories like broken film reels, laughing with coworkers, eating dinner with my ex, her head resting on my shoulder, while some show played in the background. Back then, I didn't realize how much those small moments mattered. I thought they were just filler between real life, but now, stripped of them, I understood. Those were the only things that made life feel real at all. Days blurred. I lost count. I tried applying for new jobs, but every rejection felt personal. Even when it wasn't, we've decided to move forward with another candidate. Those words became a mantra of failure, echoing through my inbox. I stopped checking after a while. At some point, I realized I hadn't spoken to anyone in 3 days. My voice sounded strange when I finally used it. Raspy, unused, almost foreign. I stood in front of the mirror one night, staring at my reflection. The man looking back at me had tired eyes, a few days' worth of stubble, and a blankness that scared me. I looked like someone who'd been left behind by his own life. And maybe I had. What no one tells you is that depression doesn't announce itself dramatically. It doesn't kick the door open. It seeps in, slow and steady, like a fog under the door. You wake up one morning and realize you're already surrounded by it. And no matter how much you wave your arms, you can't clear the air. I didn't know it then, but my body wasn't just reacting to sadness. It was adapting to loss, to uncertainty, to falling low in life's invisible hierarchy. My brain was whispering that I didn't belong anywhere anymore, and that whisper felt like truth. Asterisk, the strange thing about falling apart is that it rarely looks like what you expect. There's no dramatic breakdown, no single moment where you scream into the void or collapse to your knees in the rain. It's quieter than that, emptier. For me, it started with silence. I stopped answering calls, then texts, then eventually stopped opening the door when people knocked. My mother left voicemails, her voice soft and worried. Just call me back, honey. I don't care what time. My best friend Mark tried jokes at first, then concern. Dude, are you okay? We haven't seen you in weeks. I told him I was busy. Busy doing what? I had no idea. Mostly sitting on my couch staring at the floor, the TV on, but the sound off, like I was watching my own life muted. The walls in my apartment began to feel closer. I knew every crack in the ceiling, every creak of the floorboards when I shifted my weight. I started sleeping on the couch because my bed felt too big, too empty. Nights were the hardest. The stillness would settle in, and I'd lie there, wide awake, thinking about every mistake I'd ever made, every person I'd disappointed. I thought a lot about my ex. It's funny. She wasn't even the reason I fell apart, not directly, but she became the symbol of everything I'd lost. When we were together, I didn't realize how much her presence anchored me. The sound of her laugh, the warmth of her legs tangled with mine at night, the small arguments about nothing, they made me feel human. Now, the absence of her laughter was a sound I couldn't get used to. Sometimes I'd scroll through old photos of us, her smiling in that yellow sundress she loved, the one that made her look like she belonged to summer itself. I'd zoom in on her face until it blurred into pixels, as if that would somehow bring her closer. I knew it was pathetic, but it was the only way to remember what being wanted felt like. People always say time heals, but they never mention how long that takes, how endless the waiting feels. Every morning, I told myself I'd go outside, take a walk, maybe grab coffee. But by noon, my motivation would fade, replaced by that heavy, chemical fatigue that makes even brushing your teeth feel like climbing a mountain. And yet, beneath the numbness, there was something worse, a quiet, gnawing panic, because I could feel my identity slipping. Who was I now, without a job, without love, without purpose? My brain began asking questions I didn't want answers to. Why get out of bed? Why try again? What difference would it make? These weren't thoughts I wanted to have, but they came anyway, like intruders in the dark. At one point, I remember standing in front of the window at 3 a.m., looking down at the empty street. The moonlight painted everything silver, even the trash bins. It was so still, like the world had paused, just for me. I thought about what it would feel like to just step outside and keep walking, not toward anything specific, just away. Away from this apartment, away from the quiet disappointment of being me. But I didn't move. I just stood there until dawn crept up, and the world started again, without my permission. That morning, I caught my reflection in the window, pale skin, dark circles, hollow eyes, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. I looked like someone whose life had ended, but whose body hadn't gotten the message yet. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just sadness. It was biology. I remembered reading somewhere that when your brain senses you've fallen low in life, no love, no belonging, no progress, it lowers your serotonin. It's your body's way of saying you're failing. You need to rebuild. But the cruel part is that while it's trying to save you, it also paralyzes you. It makes everything hurt. It makes every little thing, the cold floor under your feet, the empty space beside you, feel unbearable. I wanted to rebuild. I did, but I didn't know how to start. And so, like a wounded animal, I stayed still. The days turned into a rhythm of survival. Wake up, breathe, eat something small, sleep again. The silence became my company, the loneliness my shadow, and deep down, I knew that if something didn't change soon, I'd forget what hope even felt like. Asterisk. There comes a point where the silence stops being peaceful and starts becoming unbearable. Mine came one afternoon in late November, the kind of day when the light outside looks like it's already given up. The sky was gray, the air cold enough to make the windows sweat, and the world felt like it was holding its breath. I remember sitting on the couch, a bowl of cereal untouched on the table in front of me, the milk turning warm. My phone buzzed once, a calendar reminder for an appointment I'd forgotten weeks ago, and then went still again. That sound, that single vibration, somehow echoed through the whole apartment, and I realized no one was going to call, no one was coming. That truth hit me harder than anything else had. It wasn't that I didn't have people who cared. I did, but I'd shut them all out, retreating so far into myself that I'd become unreachable. The loneliness wasn't just circumstantial anymore. It had turned into an identity, and that realization scared the hell out of me. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the light. The reflection staring back at me was unrecognizable. Hair unkempt, beard uneven, eyes bloodshot from too many nights staring at the ceiling. There was something hollow in my expression, something animalistic. The version of me that used to laugh, to dream, to love. He wasn't there anymore, that night. I almost did something irreversible. I stood by the open window again. Like I had before, the city stretched out beneath me in blurry streaks of light. Cars moved below, distant and small, each one containing people with places to be, people who mattered to someone. I remember thinking how I used to be one of them, rushing somewhere, loving someone, believing that life was leading somewhere meaningful. Now, I was standing at the edge, and everything inside me was quiet. Not sad, not angry, just still. And then, something stupid saved me. My neighbor's dog started barking. A sharp, desperate sound that echoed through the alleyway. It startled me out of the trance. A door slammed. Someone yelled. Life continued outside my window. The spell broke. I stepped back, sat on the floor, and for the first time in months, I cried. Not the quiet kind of crying either, the ugly, shaking kind, the kind that leaves you gasping for air. When it was over, I felt empty, but also lighter, like I'd finally let go of something I'd been holding too tightly. Maybe that's what rock bottom really is, not a fall, but a surrender. After that night, I started doing small things again. Nothing heroic, just small. I washed a few dishes. I opened the blinds. I texted Mark back, just one word. Hey. He replied almost immediately, like he'd been waiting for me. We met for coffee that weekend. The air was freezing, but the sun was out, the kind of day that tricks you into thinking spring and far away. Mark looked relieved when he saw me. We talked about nothing important, movies, football, stupid memes, but underneath it all, I could feel something shifting, connection, the faint warmth of being seen. I didn't tell him about the window. I didn't tell him how close I'd come. But I didn't have to. He knew. Somehow, that night, when I got home, I noticed the world looked a little different. The same apartment, the same walls, but there was something else in the air now. A pulse. I realized that even in the darkest moments, the body still wants to live. The heart still wants to love. The soul still reaches, even when your mind says it's over. That was the first day I started to fight back. It wasn't some cinematic comeback. I still woke up tired. I still felt like a failure most days. But there was a small voice now, quiet but persistent, whispering that maybe I hadn't been ruined. That maybe there was something left to build from. And for the first time in months, I believed it, even if only for a few seconds. Asterisk, they don't tell you this part, the part after the breakdown, after the tears, when the world is still the same, but you are quietly different. It's not a sudden transformation. There's no music swelling in the background, no cinematic sunrise. It's just slow, messy, honest. In the days that followed, I didn't have a plan. I just knew I didn't want to disappear. That small, fragile decision was enough. I started waking up a little earlier, not because I wanted to, but because the silence felt heavier the longer I stayed in bed. I'd make coffee, sit by the window, and just watch. The city was still there, indifferent but alive. Delivery trucks, joggers, dogs pulling their owners along icy sidewalks. Everyone was moving forward, somehow, and for the first time, I thought maybe I could. One morning, I opened my old notebook, the one I used to jot ideas in when I still cared about things. The pages were full of half-sentences, sketches of plans, dreams that once felt possible. I ran my fingers over the ink and felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in months, curiosity. That day, I wrote one line at the bottom of the page. Start small, but start, and I did. I cleaned my apartment, really cleaned it, scrubbed the floors, threw away the clutter, washed every dish that had been sitting in the sink for weeks. It was exhausting, but when I finished, it felt like I'd reclaimed a tiny corner of my life. Then I went for a walk. The air was sharp, my breath clouding in front of me. I walked past the cafe where I'd met Mark and decided to go in. The same barista smiled like she remembered me. Maybe she didn't, but it didn't matter. It felt nice. Over time, I started noticing things again. The way the sunlight hit the buildings around noon, the smell of bread from the bakery across the street, the laughter of a couple arguing playfully outside. Small things, but they meant something. Healing, I realized, isn't a straight line. It's more like climbing out of a deep well. You slip, you fall, you climb again. But every time you do, you get a little stronger. There were still bad days, the kind where the loneliness came back like a fog, thick and heavy. On those days, I'd remind myself of the night at the window, of how close I'd come, and how I didn't go through with it. That was my proof that I could survive anything. A few weeks later, I started going to the gym again, mostly to move, to feel something. At first, it was just 10 minutes on the treadmill, then 20. One evening, a guy next to me, maybe early 30s, tattoos on both arms, nodded and said, "Good pace." Man, it was a small comment, but it hit deeper than he could have known, because it wasn't about the treadmill, it was about being seen again. That night, for the first time in a long while, I smiled without forcing it. But by bit, life started to bleed back into me. I stopped counting the days since the breakdown and started counting little wins. A meal cooked, a text answered, a sunrise watched. And one morning, while brushing my teeth, I looked in the mirror and realized something strange. I still looked like me. Tired, sure. Scarred, definitely, but still me. And maybe that was enough for now. Asterisk. It's strange how quietly peace returns. It doesn't knock or announce itself. It just slips in between moments when you're too busy noticing that you haven't cried that day. A few months passed. The sharp edges of my pain dulled into something manageable. The silence that used to crush me started to feel peaceful, like the world wasn't punishing me anymore. It was just waiting for me to catch up. One Saturday morning, I went to a park downtown. I sat on a bench with my coffee, watching people move around me. Parents chasing kids, couples walking dogs, joggers with their music too loud. The world was alive, and for the first time, I didn't feel separate from it. I felt part of it again. That's when she sat down next to me, a woman in a gray coat, sketchbook in hand. I didn't think much of it until a few minutes later, when a gust of wind flipped one of her pages and she laughed, trying to catch it. I helped, and our hands brushed. She looked at me and smiled, a quiet, tired smile that felt real. We started talking about nothing, really. How cold it had been lately, how she liked drawing people when they didn't notice her, how coffee always tasted better outside. Her name was Anna. There was something unhurried about her, something calm. When she asked what I did, I told her the truth, trying to figure that out. She just nodded. Aren't we all? That made me laugh. And it felt good. We started meeting at the same bench every few days. Sometimes we talk for hours. Sometimes we just sit in silence, sharing the same view of the world. She had a way of seeing beauty in small things, the reflection of light on puddles, the way trees moved in the wind. And slowly, I started to see it too. I didn't fall for her quickly. I was too careful for that now. But she became a part of my healing, a gentle reminder that connection didn't have to hurt, that people could come into your life and not demand anything from you. One evening, as the sun dipped low, she asked me what I'd been through, not with pity, just curiosity. I hesitated, then told her about the job, the loneliness, the nights I thought I'd break. She listened quietly, her eyes soft but steady. When I finished, she didn't give me advice. She just said, "You made it through. That's something." And somehow, that meant more than anything anyone had said to me before. That night, walking home, I realized something simple yet profound. Healing isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about learning to carry it differently. I still have bad days. Sometimes the old emptiness comes back. But now, I know what it is. Not a failure, not a weakness, just a signal. A whisper from my biology saying, "You've fallen low before. You know how to climb. And every time I do now when I wake up, I open the window, breathe in the morning air, and let the light hit my face. I still have no grand plan, but I have days that feel worth living. people who make me smile, and a version of myself who finally believes that rebuilding isn't about becoming who I was. It's about becoming someone new, someone who lived through the fall and learned how to stand again.